Do you want to hit the record button? Awesome. Well, this is the Nature-Based Spirituality Employee Resource Group. If you are not familiar with Employee Resource Group or ERGs, they are voluntary employee-led groups within a company that are formed around shared interests, identities, or backgrounds. And if this is your first call with the Nature-Based Spirituality ERG, welcome. We're very happy to have you. My name is Sam Hunt. Heath Bird and I are the co-leads of this ERG. Heath started this group about a year ago, making it one of the newest ERGs at SWCA. And we've had a strong membership ever since our first meeting about a year ago, which I think really speaks to the need that there was to form this community within SWCA, which is obviously environmentally focused. And a little bit about NBS, nature-based spirituality. The defining characteristic is a reverence or respect for nature that an individual experiences as spiritual. It often involves a strong feeling of interconnectedness, and this group welcomes people of any spiritual background, no spiritual background at all are welcome to attend. And if you're interested in joining, you can email Heath or myself. And today we're very excited. We have a guest speaker, Dr. Patel, who will be speaking to us on the environmental teachings of Hinduism. And I'll now invite Kushali, who's one of our NBS members, to introduce Dr. Patel, who is her spiritual mentor. I thank you both for being here. And we are going to save some time at the end for questions, so feel free to hold those for the end. And I'll hand it over to Kushali.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone, and I really appreciate all for joining us. Vipul Patel, or as I respectfully call him, Vipul Bhaiya. Bhaiya is brother in my native language. So Vipul Bhaiya is a part of All World Gayatri Pariwar, the organization that works towards spiritual and social upliftment of humans and ultimately the society we live in. He is also, yes, he is my spiritual mentor. He taught me the importance of discipline in my everyday life. He how to keep a positive mindset even when things get tough, and to trust that everyone will be okay eventually. But the main thing that I'm learning from him is the scientific basis of religious concepts, mantras, rituals, and why we should incorporate them in our life. It is easier to follow them when the with discipline if we know the meaning and importance. So one more thing that I want to point out, that we are not promoting any religion or Hinduism. Our main goal of this talk is to work towards upliftment of humanity. One of the purpose of this talk is to share some unifying values that originated and fostered by Asian Indian society, like harmony with nature, selflessness, devotion, honesty, and hard work, a sense of belonging and interconnectedness with the community, karmas. Lastly, when I joined this ERG, my first thought was how amazing it would be to if I can invite you, Vipulbhaya, to share some insight on connections between nature and Hinduism. And here we are. I will stop here. Vipulbhaya, the floor is yours.
Right. Thank you for the group to giving me this opportunity. And as I mentioned, right, we'll do a question answers. Feel free to open where I don't know. I'll be the first one to admit that I don't know the answer. And there is a reason I have chosen this title, Let the Sun Shine on You. If you look at the most ancient Hindu scripture, that is Rig Veda, and it's probably for world, it's the most ancient according to United Nations, at least origin 4 5,000 years ago. And the very first verse for that says that Surya Jagatasya Atma means sun is the life force for the world that we live in, right? So it starts from recognizing that, and that's why I said that let that light that illuminates us and makes us more curious and an ability to see through things that we typically don't see. So, yeah, just a basic introduction about myself. So, professionally, I'm a scientist, work in the field of optics and semiconductors, principal engineer in Cisco systems. But over the years, I developed passion for learning basic things that our parents and grandparents taught us, that do this and don't do this, and I did not have the answer. And then my children started asking many questions going up in this. So then I picked up things, and then out of that I also picked up some of the rituals. So I become a volunteer priest. I don't do priesthood for money, but especially when new generation is involved and they have questions, then I do perform rituals. So that's why you see me in this yellow dress. That is a traditional dress, and I performed a wedding of a couple, that the girl was Indian, and the husband was born in a different background. Also participate heavily in one of the charity, what we call Seva Diwali. So Diwali is one of our largest festival, like Christmas for Christians, or for Eid, or Hanukkah for the other cultures. And what we do there is that we collect all the non-perishable food and give it to our local pantries for the welfare of all people who are underprivileged in this country, and that rely on pantries, right, irrespective of the religion or belief system. There's another project that I'm also involved with, is finding and digitizing and making the ancient writings and commentaries on various topics of Hinduism. And there is in millions, right, and used to be passed on from generations to generations, but especially last 100 to 200 years of colonial rules, right, people have lost value in that, and the language in which it is written, mainly in Sanskrit, that is also kind of getting very become very dormant, and very few people are experts in it. So a lot of them are getting destroyed. So we are just collecting, digitizing, even though I don't understand many of it, but we are making it and saving it for the humanity for future. So that's about me. So let me start with the topic. And there is one very big confusion about Hinduism in the West, and that is that Hindus believe in many gods. That is, in fact, very limited interpretation of Hinduism, and that originates because people see many different forms of worship. So Hindu concept, if you look at it in depth, it's not even a concept of one God. It's a concept of only God, that everything is manifestation of God. Creation is integral part of creator, right? And hence creator, or the God Almighty, in true sense is infinite, beyond perception, and in true sense omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, or all knowing, all providing, all existing. And hence it's an infinite. And when we try to perceive that infinite, we as a human, we have limited uh, perception. And hence, in Hinduism, you are allowed to worship God Almighty through any form that represents divine quality. And that's why a lot of nature also is worshipped. So the first picture is worshiping of sun. And as I mentioned, right, sun is considered the life force for the earth. The second one is rivers. They are also the water sources and life source. So waters are also, and especially you may have heard of the holy river Ganges, as the colonials called it, but the real name is Ganga. Then Himalayas also is worshipped, right, for its spiritual powers, and a lot of penance is being done there. And what I'm showing is another form in that third picture here. Hold on, let me just pointer option highlight. Not highlight. Just give me one. Right, of Lord Shiva, who is meditating all the time. Then his son Ganesha, and there is a symbolism there also, and I'll walk you through at least one symbolism. Then also the females were highly respected, right? And the feminine deities, right, were worshipped as Shaktis, or the source of the energy. In fact, they are always placed in front of. So even when you call them by name, always the female names comes first before the male's name, right? If there's a couple. Just to walk you through the symbolisms here and give you one classic example, right? So when you look at this symbolism of Ganesha, so one thing is there, that we don't worship to these forms. We worship God Almighty through these forms. And if you look at this form, it's an elephant head on top of a human body. And it is known as the deity that removes um, obstacles from your life. And that's why, you always start the worship with invocation of that specific form. And it has symbolically two wives, Riddhi and Siddhi. One is your inner strength, the other one is external prosperity. What is the symbolism here? And that's why when you worship, you must remember why you are, and do you relate to those divine qualities represented by them that is applicable to all humanity. So big ears, very good listener, right? If we start listening, a lot of our problems go away. And that becomes very apparent when we fight and argue, because then we are not even listening to the other person. We are manipulating answer, and that's why we interrupt the other person. Right. So we don't hear the person for how they feel and why they are saying things. We hear them for the words, and then we also have our own judgmental nature that comes in, and assumption comes in. Not only that, big belly means what you hear, you digest. So you only say things that, after proper analysis, and that's why small mouth. So you only say what is needed. And if you put these qualities in the life, then Vignaharta, a lot of obstacles will go away. And that's why every wedding that takes place, right? The very first ritual is this, where couple is taught that you must put these qualities in your life. The second is the trunk, which is a very powerful organ also, but it can pick up a straw. So that means when you gain power, you must not lose your flexibility or humility. And if you look at most of the wars, that happens because somebody becomes very rigid and egoistic, right? Uh, so removing obstacles, that's another. There are multiple symbolisms, and every form that you see on the altar will have that. But the key here is that you are not worshiping to that form, you are worshiping the God Almighty or the divine through the qualities that are represented by that form. So other thing about Hinduism, that it's all inclusive, that is not very well known about. In fact, one of the verses in Rig Veda says that Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, which literally means the truth is one. And you can call truth as God Almighty also, that it's one. But the wise speak it as many. And the reason is that, as I mentioned, it's infinite, right? So anybody who tries to describe that and limit it in words or a description will not do the full justice. So then each perspective adds a new dimension uh, to the whole. And that's why in Hinduism, right, you don't have to give up your own beliefs to practice Hinduism. You can still worship, or don't even have to change your way of worship, or you don't have to call yourself Hindu. You can just put values in your life of being better human. And in fact, so there are a lot of common uh, people in India, right, who also revered, Jesus Christ, for example, as one of the deities, or something who represents the God Almighty. Also, other thing is that Hinduism does not have one book, but a library. And as I mentioned, right, there are millions of scriptures. And in fact, debate is very highly encouraged, known as Shastrarth, meaning finding the meaning of the scriptures. And there are debates that were, in fact, part of the uh, system. And that's why, there are many different branches that developed over the years. And one thing that is common in all of them, that there is no conflict with science. It's very adaptive religion, right? If science can prove something wrong, they will critically look at it. And again, there is no one head or anything, right? So it's like what we have here in a conference system, right? Where science develops by people sharing and learning from each other and validating, right? That also brings, right, when I say science, no conflict with science. When we think about it, right, the research suggests that we are researching the laws of nature that already in existence, right? We are not inventing anything new. Same is the meaning of discover, that we are only recover. So in Hinduism, right, nature takes the predominant, or the natural laws takes the predominant significance, right? And everything else that is adapted to make sure that we understand that and keep on growing from there. Same thing about miracles, that, blind faith is not recommended in Hinduism, right? It's more of a logical. Faith is very important aspect of, and I think it's true of every religion, including Hinduism, that talks about taking blind leap of faith, but after understanding why. And so miracle also in Hinduism treated slightly differently. That the miracle, right, don't are not something that happens without reason. It's different story that we don't understand the logic or the science or the guiding principles behind that miracle, but it is also treated as a scientific aspects, right? And that's how continuous growth is possible, because people are not bound, and one has to have open mind. And when we talk about open mind coming from a science background, one thing that I have noticed, and I can feel also, that we scientists also are not very open-minded. Because science has two principles. The very first says that you must demand proof to accept, which I think, all very well ingrained in us. But science has another aspect also, that is, to reject a claim or a hypothesis also requires proof. And I think that's where a lot of our biases and conditioning kicks in, right? So we tend to reject things much faster than we accept, when we should apply the same rigor for both. So one thing that I learned when I started digging deeper is that there's a concept of five element, and it's not element. Element is the translation that you will find on internet. It's elemental energy. And according to Hinduism, it's made of five different elemental energies that also have physical form. So that's fire, water, earth, air, and space or ether, known as Akasha. Now, my knowledge of Christianity is very primitive, but one thing that really caught my eye was when I watched the movie The Angels and Demons by Tom Hanks, and it does talk about early Christianity having description of this four elemental energy without the Akasha. And then the Japanese traditions also has something similar. And you may remember that movie Avatar, The Last Airbender, right, where the energy of the air was harvested. And in fact, the movie, the Avatar with the blue tall people, there is a tree, inverted tree of Gaia there, of the source of energy. And if you look at the background of where that came from, there's a Gaia hypothesis developed by a NASA scientist who was looking at why life exists on Earth. And his conclusion was that Earth is you may consider Earth as a live thing where it responds, and we call it nature's work and things like that. But it responds and then readjusts itself, and so Earth is considered also a life source for that specific movie, and a very similar concept in Hinduism also. So first, I'll talk about the water. And water is considered, if you look at the scriptures in Hinduism and the description, and there is an energy that is claimed to be associated with water. And I'm saying claimed because its scientific proofs are very limited. And that is known as universal energy, or the known as Vishwavidyut. And it is believed that water is reacts to thoughts and emotions, and like an active or a living thing. The closest research that I came to that is of Professor William Taylor of Stanford University. He just passed away 2, 3 years ago, but he was able to demonstrate alteration of chemical properties, especially the pH, which is the acidic or the basic nature of the water, with meditation without touching it. And he called it the imprinting the intent experiments, and he did it remotely. He also did it Faraday cage, and then came out with a quantum mechanics based theory of U1 and U2 gauge symmetry, and why that may be possible and things of that nature. In parallel to him, there was work done by Dr. Emoto of Japan, that has become a lot more popular because of his book, The Messages of Water. But from science point of view, there is still, not fully accepted. His data is not fully accepted. But he was also clearly showing by looking at the crystal formation that water reacts to thoughts and emotions. So, for example, what I'm showing here is that he has written on two Petri dishes, and one he said, "Thank you." One he said, "I will kill you," the negative emotions. And when you freeze the water, and when you look at the crystal structure for that, right, this level of difference you see, and he has done thousands of experiments for that. But because the human thoughts and emotions are involved, right? Not everybody is able to reproduce that, and that's why I said that, take that information with only that there is a possibility. And the similar concepts are there in different religions also. When, in my primitive study of Bible, I came across water considered as a living thing, and holy water is also considered very common concept in Christianity. In Hinduism also, when in rituals, the life force is invoked, or the blessings are invoked, that is invoked in the water bowl known as Kalasha. And the same water is sprinkled on everybody as a blessings in the end, in a ritual called Shanti Pat, where peace for not just you, but the peace of the entire universe, known as Antarikshagum Shanti. Those who may have heard or attended any ritual, that you prayed for the peace of the entire universe through that ritual, using that water that was energized with the prayers. So that talks about the water as an energy element. Earth also considered as an energy element and a living thing. As I mentioned earlier, the Gaia hypothesis is very similar. And you may see description and deities created around Mother Earth. And in fact, Earth is never called as Earth. It always addressed as Dharti Mata or Mother Earth. And what that teaches us also, two things: compassion and acceptance, because that's what Earth represents. But more than that, right? If you considered Mother Earth as your mother, imagine, how we would treat our mother, right? We never want to hurt. So that environmental sensitivity is ingrained in the teaching. And even 2, 3 generations ago, when my grandparents, right? So I spent some time with my grandparents, and one first thing I was taught, which is now kind of lost in India, is that when you wake up and you put your first step on coming out of the bed, the very first prayer that you do is gratitude to Mother Earth. And the farmers today still in India are called the son of the land, Dharti Putra, or son of the earth. So very high gratitude, and that gets ingrained into every practice, including even wedding, right? With the place where wedding takes place, also the earth and the energy of the earth is worshipped first, or you start any project, or even when you move into new house, right? You pray and then try to influence the energy, or energize the energy of the land on which you are going to spend time. Another is Agni, or the fire, and fire is a representation of sun. Fire has also, it's considered, essential for all forms of worship, including the cremation, right, which is the last rites. So every ritual in Hinduism that takes place, even wedding takes place in the witness of fire. But fire itself has many essential things. Fire teaches us, so it burns itself to give light, right? If you want to use or benefit the world, and if you have the talent, you must open that up, right, and spread it in the surrounding to help those who are in the need by teaching and sharing knowledge. Same thing about warmth, right? It burns itself to give warmth. If you want to do anything for nature or fellow human beings, you have to give up something of your own, right? You cannot do that unless it becomes a selfless service, right? And it's also considered a transformer, where through which you establish the connection between the physical and the subtle world. And when I say subtle world, simple analogy, right, is even the acids in the stomach are known as jataragni, or one form of fire, through which through that chemical process, you convert solid food into a life force that sustains us. So it is worship from that point of view, and that is ingrained in a lot of daily practices. So one of the daily practice, and you may have seen that at the time of Diwali, where a lot of lamps are lit, but a lamp typically is lit in every household on a daily basis, and that use a very specific form of milk known as ghee. Now, ghee is now becoming very common. I think Costco has started carrying it also, and a lot of, right. So it's a good replacement for butter. So when you melt the butter, that's where the ghee is formed. And there are specific ways that are prescribed in the ancient Indian methodology of creating that ghee. And doing some research, what I find, why ghee? So I found sources of ghee that are 100 plus years old. And in fact, one place I found a ghee that is stored for 650 years. So it's one of the greatest invention from ancient India, that, it's the only form of milk that does not spoil. Right? Even the precursor to that, which is the butter, or the cream, also spoils, right? You cannot store it for long. So imagine when you light a lamp and you fumigate the house with that, right? It's very powerful disinfectant. And of course, this has to be proven scientifically. And I've been involved setting up a research laboratory in a university that is affiliated with the organization that has influenced me. And then so within a year or two, hopefully, we will have some data to show that burning ghee has. There's some work done, but not very systematic. That lighting ghee lamp every day definitely helps with health and other things. And you know other benefits of light, and then that you may see also, right, in seasonal affective disorder. For example, when you're depressed, a lot of doctors recommend that if you go in the sunlight, your depression is less. And then people even put artificial lights on the treadmills and things like that to remove season-based disorders or depressions. So that's why every meditation you do, typically you light the lamp, or in every religion, right? That's why candles are very common also, or in Torah, in Judaic traditions, the it's all about light. Same thing about mantras and the Sanskrit language in which the mantras are written. So the mantra word in Western now, I think people have started recognizing that as a phrase. But what people don't realize is that mantras are prayers that is betterment for the entire universe. So it doesn't, most mantras don't pray for a very specific group or a gender. It's always had that hidden essence of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, which means that, may all be happy, may all prosper, right? And one of the description or the one of the definition of mantra is that manaha trayatiti mantra, meaning the one that controls or trains your mind is mantra. How does it do it? So mantras in one form or another, every religion prays to the qualities of God Almighty, right? And Sanskrit, when you chant it in Sanskrit, it has some additional advantages. But when you keep on repeating the prayers, what you're doing is you are probably creating a new pathways on your neuron firing sequence and rewiring your brain. One of the very mantra that is very powerful is known as Gayatri mantra. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Na Prachodayat. And it is a prayer for righteous intellect for all. And when we say all, the whole universe. What is good for all is good for us. And we all are an integral part of the same universe. So another phrase of Hinduism is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, that the whole world is my family. And when it says whole world, it's not just the humans, it's all. Everything living on this world is my family. Um, so the reason I brought up chanting in Sanskrit, it's an ancient language. Most Indian languages have origin in Sanskrit. There is a debate about the Aryan theory, and I think some of the recent data is negating that Aryan theory that was developed by the colonials. But for most people, I think that's what the teachings were, and when growing up, we also learned that. But Sanskrit was developed in India, and it is has the highest number of words, and it's also considered grammatically very, very structured, to the point that there is a whole research activity going on. Can we use Sanskrit and the phonics of Sanskrit and the structure of the Sanskrit to do computer languages? Um, and there is one very notable work. There is a university in Iowa known as Maharshi University. Um, you may not know the founder of that or the inspirer for that. It was Mahesh Yogi, but you all probably will know that the Beatles went to India in 60s and brought back some meditation and other techniques. So they went, and Mahesh Yogi is their guru or their teacher. And this university is based mainly by, run by non-Indians or people who did not grow up in India. It has a very big R&D also on doing systematic studies on science from ancient India. There is one person who is a full-time faculty there. His name is Dr. Fred Travis. He's the director of ERG and Psychology Lab. They also get 10 million plus funding from NIH on the average, National Institute of Health here. One of the very notable work that Dr. Fred Travis did is that he recently demonstrated that Sanskrit established the relationship of reading in Sanskrit and the brain functioning and the improvement of brain functions. Other research he has also done that when you listen to hymns that are chanted in Sanskrit, right, it gives you the very calming effect. And he showed that using skin resistance and some of the other biophysical experiments. So, you know, almost all the rituals that are performed in Hinduism are performed in this ancient language of Sanskrit. I do that, but I still don't understand the Sanskrit as well. There is some other, and just an example of how developed the science in ancient India was, and over the time it probably got lost. But in New Delhi, which is the capital of India, there is a corrosion resistance iron pillar there, and that is standing there for over 2,500 years. And people have not figured out how the ancients made it. It's just like pyramid, right? That people still struggle with, how it may have been made. This is another classical example for that because the iron will get rusted, right? The modern science still has not figured out how to make rustless iron otherwise. If you figure out that out, right, your bridges' lives will be extended for rather than, in decades to centuries or millennia. Um, and then there is some basic research work done there by metallurgists of IITs. IITs are like very premium call engineering institutions like MITs and Stanford in India. And so they have found some compounds of ions and they have created an hypothesis on how the rust doesn't form there, but they still have not been able to formulate how they created that layer. The reason I bought that is just to demonstrate, right, that there is so much that we as a humans may have forgotten from past history, and especially right when it's the winners who write the history. So a lot of the knowledge sometimes to prove your own superiority is already pushed down or hidden. And as I mentioned, right, with when we look at things with open mind, there is so much we can learn from the ancient practices that we can apply today. And internet is a big blessing that has removed a lot of middlemen. So the information flow is much better than what it used to be in past, which was always controlled by some power center, right, for their own benefits. That the information was constrained. That I think has opened up, and the middlemen are disappearing on the information flow. Another such example is, there is a description, and as I mentioned, there's debates about scriptures. So there was one great scholar of 14th century whose text has survived. So you can identify those texts still being, uh, uh, stored in specific libraries. And he talked about and he gave a description of one of the verse in which he described the speed of light. And he calculated that based on, the units that were prevalent at that time to be within 0.15% of what we know now. So then that triggered me that when did we, from modern science point of view, started knowing the speed of light? So all the early documentation you find says that speed of light is infinite. It's only in 17th century that 18th century is when it was first even proposed that the light is very very fast but not infinite. It has a finite speed. And over the years, especially in 19th century, a lot of experiments were done. And I was very surprised to find out that, what we have been taught in schools, right, 3 times 10 to the power 8 meter per second speed of light, that standard was agreed upon in 67 after I was born. So, just to highlight here that, there was a lot of knowledge that was available. I mean, if you go to South America also, right, in uh, Machu Picchu and others, there are a lot of things you will find there, like pyramids, right, that we cannot explain how they did that those years ago. So all I said is that there was some knowledge that probably was suppressed or deliberately pushed down uh, to prove superiority of the conquerors, and the humanity as a whole paid the price for that. So one thing that, and Mahakal is the deity that represents the time. And if we think about how fast the world has changed, in last 50 years it changed, and especially after the 60s and 70s when the integrated circuit becomes available, that started hold this electronic uh, ability to do things. World changed faster than past 500 years in absolute term. And if you look at even last 5 years now, right, with the AI and everything else coming on board and that whole internet, it has changed much faster than it did in last 50 years. When I graduated in 93 in New Jersey, for me to find a job in California, I have to go to New York in library to find if there is any San Jose Mercury advertisements for a paper, advertisements were there. 97, 96, 97, when the internet was introduced, and I was part of that transition because I work in the similar field and then the whole internet. But I've seen how fast the world has changed, and it looks like the rate of change is escalating, not slowing down, especially with AI and the possibility that is coming from AI. So we are living in a great moment of change. A lot of yogis and the spiritual masters from India has predicted this for decades, that we are going to hit that plateau, and then very soon we will start seeing. In fact, what is the person who wrote this, The New World? Eckhart Tolle also talks about very similar things. So the question to us is, are we ready to participate? And I like to close this with saying that, the change is a normal phenomena of the nature. There is nothing in this universe that is not changing. When you think about it at a personal level or a planet level or a galaxy level, right? It's constantly changing. In fact, the whole universe is expanding. So there is nothing that is constant or frozen in the universe. Everything is changing all the time. Yet we humans are always afraid of change. Right? So when we develop this larger outlook and rely on some of these nature principles, right? So the question to the whole team is that, are we ready to participate in this change that is unavoidable, right? Either we become part of it or we resist. And so with that, we can open this up for question and answers. And thank you for listening. Yeah.
All
And by
right.
the way, the namaste, right, means that I bow down to the divinity in you. They is that. And that is because the God is formless. Typically, the description of God Almighty is genderless, right? Beyond perception type of thing. So it is addressed as a gender neutral that. And namahate means that I bow down to the goodness in you, or I respect the goodness in you. I have a choice to look at bad in you. I have a choice to look at good in you, but I choose to only look at good in you.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor, for your presentation. That was fascinating. And I was impressed by how many similarities there are to some of the other traditions that I'm familiar with, the light and the elements and some of those things. That was really interesting. Yeah, so for questions, everybody feel free to raise your hands and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat and I'll try to kind of mediate. But yeah, we've got a fair amount of time. So if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask.
Since we have time, we could open it up for discussion too. If people just have comments or ideas they want to talk about, it doesn't have to be a question.
Go ahead. Go first.
I'll echo that. Thank you so much for presenting to us. It is truly fascinating how the various symbolism and things that we all participate in are similar across multiple thought processes. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep, I see Tara has raised her hand. Tara?
Hi, thank you so much for this. This is really, really amazing. And also knowing, how close you are with Kushali, and I love Kushali, so I'm sure you had a lot to do with helping her with that too. But I wanted to thank you for talking about the power of water. I thought that was really interesting. I know like in a lot of Buddhism, they talk about water as well. I once attended a talk where the Dalai Lama was present along with Muhammad Ali before he passed away. And in his speech, he talked about how all religions are like water. One religion may be called a river, religion may be called a creek, but they all contain water, they all contain truths. And I really just appreciated, you're mentioning about water. I think that's such a powerful thing. Thank you.
Yes. So I think one thing comment I like to add is if you think about us, our body is also majority of body is made of water, right? 80% or whatever, 70 to 90% water, right? And probably that is the reason the company that we keep influences quite a bit.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask about your opinion of using the phrase namaste for like in yoga classes and stuff about like cultural appropriation and things like that. What are your thoughts?
So you can, as long as you explain the meaning, right? Otherwise, it can be interpreted as a religious practice, right? And then some people may have issues with it, right? But if you say that I see goodness in you by doing that, in whatever, representation that you may have, then it may be okay.
Great, thank you.
I mean, we just need to open up minds for people, right? I think majority of the issues that we have in the name of religion, we have killed more people. And that's applicable to every religion, right? At one point of time. Right. So I think and then that is because of the closeness that, we are preached and be fearful of things, right? So openness will also get rid of some of the fears for the right things, right? We have to use your logical brain also, not just the faith. But you have to, I think, do that based on your people that you're dealing with, right? If you hurt somebody's ego or belief, right, then you lose that person. You have to manage that. The other thing that Hinduism has a concept of three level of bodies. One of them is the physical form, the other is mental, and the last one is emotional, what we know is Sthul Karan, Sukshma and Karan. So the emotional and the faith body is the strongest, right? Where the convictions and belief systems are. And once somebody is emotional, logic will not work. It will overpower the logic. So I think if you're dealing with groups, you have to make sure that you manage that aspects. But yeah, otherwise there is no reason, right? And it's more of a greeting than even a religious practice. And even Trump did that in the time of COVID.
Thanks. Sam, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I feel like a common sentiment I hear amongst our members of the nature-based spirituality group here is that we find a hard time balancing our spiritual practice with the demands of our lives, or particularly work. Sitting at a desk for 40 hours a week for a lot of us is challenging. So I'm wondering if you have advice for those who are struggling the balance of your spiritual practice and work and life.
So I think we all struggle with that, right? But there are practices that you can do, right? And you have to start showing gratitude to the work because that feeds us, right? Once that gratitude comes, that I'm doing this, this for my betterment, right? That I have to produce something because I'm taking some money in return, right? And then attaching value, right? So you have to balance the value system, right? And for that, there are a lot of practices that you can do, right? Especially to get rid of frustration, right? Deep breathing is there everywhere, right? That when you feel frustrated, right? If you do deep breath, it will go away. But there is a theory behind that also. And I think in West, the yoga is known as more of a physical activity. But if you look at the scriptures, and it was written by Patanjali 2000 years ago, and so there are 8 limbs of that practice, right? Yoga is the third one, but before that there is a yama and niyama, means practicing and then a purification, right? Then this asanas, and even the physical exercise is limited understanding in the West. But there are various postures that can heal specific disease. For example, I have high sugar now, not that high, but I'm on a borderline. So I started looking into that. And there are specific sequence of yoga postures that helps you improve the function of your pancreas. So that's the aspect that is also not. And then after that, there is a pranayam, which is the deep breathing. And the breathing, then there are many different forms of pranayams, right? But if you look at the very basic essence of pranayam, so one of the basic thing you can do, especially at night, is just start counting your breath. That will help you quite a bit with calmness. Because when you become aware that you're breathing, right, it's typically done through unconscious. When you start doing that, right, the biggest fear we have is the fear of death. And when you start counting unconsciously, you are started saying that I'm not the breath, I'm the observer of the breath, right? Me and breath are separate because I can count it, I can watch it, right? And that removes a lot of the fears. And those type of practices, right? The other practice you can also do, right? Instead, a lot of people get stressed out, right, on unfinished tasks. That I still have this deliverables and that deliverables, right, remaining. One of the practice that I find very useful is that at night, so none of us can tell what is going to happen to us even 5 minutes from now, right? And yet our mind is so fearful of death that it will not contemplate that, right? But if you forcefully start contemplating at night that I don't even know if I'm waking up in the morning or not, right? Why am I carrying the worries forward, right? So you surrender that. That's saying that, I want to sleep. I don't know if I wake up in the morning or not. If I wake up, I will start my day fresh and carry forward whatever is left, right? So what you do is you take a mental note when you go to sleep on how was your day, what things were done, what things were not accomplished, right? And then I think all of us will say that a lot of things we intend to do, there's never 100% success ratio on that, right? But you take a mental note of it and said, I'm going to park it on the side. I'm not going to worry about it because I don't even know if I'm there in the morning or not. And when you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you do is show your gratitude to whatever form of divine that you relate to for blessing you with one, next day, right? And then make a list of what you want to accomplish. Plan your day, right? This was left behind for yesterday. I'm adding that, and these are the new things I'm adding, right? And if you just do that cycle, which takes 5 minutes in the evening and 5 minutes, when you go to sleep and 5 minutes in the morning, your sleep will improve. And if your sleep improves, then definitely your day will improve. And there are many small practices like that, right? That people can implement that are not independent of religious belief.
Yes, thank you for that.
Do you have any good like resources for different mantras, like books or maybe a website or something?
Um, I have to look for it, but yeah, there are certain soothing chants on YouTube that I can definitely share through Kushali that she can share with you, and then we can find the meanings of it also. So when you chant, you know the meanings. Of course, you can do a Google search, but Google has so many different interpretations, right? That you have to pick the right one.
Great, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see. Well, I had a question. So I did not know that the kind of worshiping the divine through the elements was a part of Hinduism. So that was interesting to find out. Um, and I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about the sort of the devotion or worship of the Earth Mother, and just sort of kind of what form that might take in somebody's everyday life, and how somebody would show gratitude and devotion to Mother Earth.
So I think walking barefoot on earth was a very common practice. In fact, the shoes were also made of wood in the in ancient India, right? And that established you, so your from energy, yeah, let me retract here, right? So if you look at the medicinal system of ancient India, that is known as Ayurveda, right, which is mainly a herbal based. And the way it was developed was by people meditating and finding solutions from within, or even establishing what is believed is establishing communications with the vegetation itself, right? That you meditate with in touch with the consciousness of the vegetation, and they start revealing a lot of the properties that they have. And that's why the whole system was developed. And that's the contrast is between the modern science or the modern allopathy that was developed by operating on dead and losing at physical evidences and building from that, right? So mind over matter is now becoming, especially after brainwave mapping and many other things are coming. Mind over matter is now becoming as one of the intense field of study now, right? Versus uh, the ancient is how the mind or the things influence the matter, right? Was the starting point. So physical manifestation was a later effect, right? And I think co-union of both is the one that will really benefit the humanity, right? And worshipping Earth in different ways, right? So emotional attachment, right? So when you see Earth as a Mother Earth, right? Even if you start calling it and addressing it Mother Earth, and visualizing your mother, right? That we all love mother in one form or other. Or at least nobody wants to intentionally hurt mother, right? If you do that, that gratitude will, each time you want to throw something in the garbage without worrying about recycling, right? You will think about that, or buying something that can, that have an alternate that does less damage is also will become. But if you really want to establish connection with the earth, if you start doing barefoot walking on the earth, that helps quite a bit. The real issue with that nowadays is that we have contaminated the earth. There are very few places that you can walk barefoot now. Even on the grass, we put so much chemicals and so much poisonous chemical to get rid of the weeds. Or even trails are sprinkled with chemicals, right, to make sure that vegetation doesn't grow and you can maintain and things of that nature. But if you can find a plot, right, that is still pristine, walking barefoot on the earth will help you establish. And one of the logic there is that just like your hands uh, and your feet are considered very, from energy body point of view, they are considered where the energy concentration is the highest, and that's why the hand is always used for blessings also, right? And especially in Reiki and all the other practices also, right? The healing hand concept is there in every religion. But the same thing is applicable at the bottom of your feet. And there are some ancient practices from India where you put certain leaves on bottom uh, of your legs. Uh, and so, for example, if you put a bitter leaves, you will see you will feel the taste within 15 minutes in your tongue. That means it has not only absorbed the chemicals through your feet, bottom of the feet, that has traveled through, right? And then there are disease healing that takes place with that also. And same thing in acupressure, acupuncture, right? They also do very similar things there, right? By creating different, opening up different energy channels within the body where there is a blockage, right? You start the flow. So I'll say walking, and that's why people enjoy walking barefoot on the ocean also. It's both water and earth, right? That you are establishing a very strong connection with.
Great, thank you.
In fact, there is one yogi who claims that walking, if you have a lot of allergies, find a pristine land, dig a hole in it, and put your feet in it for half an hour every day. Within a month or so, your allergies will start going down. And you put your feet and then cover it back with that. But the key there is that you need to find a pristine land that is not chemicalized. And which I think if you guys are nature lovers, you probably find a lot of places in the nature that are still pristine.
So see, it looks like we have time for maybe one more question or possibly two. Did anybody have any questions?
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the Akashic records and how that relates to Hinduism and the philosophy.
Right. So in Hinduism, it is believed that nothing get lost, right? Even the mantras that you chant maintain its presence in the universe. And in fact, because if you look at the sound, right, and so let me start with the sound form of mantra, right? So almost all mantra starts with Om. That Om represents the sound of the universe. That anytime there is a motion, there is a sound created, and universe is always in motion, never stationary. So the sound that the universe create is Om. So by chanting Om, you invoke the energy that controls the universe. So universe is governed by set of laws and energy. Science has not understood. That's why we said only 4% of the energy is understood. The rest of it is dark matter, dark energy in the universe. But it invokes that. So it's the sound form. And so everything that you haven't thought of is part of the Akashiya record. Akash, it's the fifth element that we talked about, right? Which is the space element or the ether. So everything gets stored, that it's like having a data center somewhere out there, right? And then, because of the reincarnation hypothesis, right? And reincarnation also is, from science point of view, there are more evidence that reincarnation takes place than, that it does not. Especially the very notable work by Professor William Tiller, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters. He's a psychologist from Columbia University graduate, practicing in Florida. Of course, whenever you talk about something that is, conflict with religious background, right, you go through a lot of severe, rejection. But then there is also another center of research in the University of Virginia by Professor Jim Tucker, who is the center of excellence on researching reincarnation. And in East India, or in the Eastern hemisphere, it's very common to come across kids who remember their past life. In West also that's happening, but it gets rejected and doesn't get highlighted. In East, it gets highlighted, right? So growing up, every 15 days in a newspaper, we heard a story of some kid at the age of 3, 4, 5 remembering the past lives. And then when parents take them to see, he recognize all the family members and the locations and everything else, and talks like, right, he was. And then that's a short-lived memory, that it doesn't stay forever, but very commonly documented. And so this professor has done thousands of case studies to show that it is possible to remember. In fact, there are 8 kids who claim that they were part of the, they were the firefighters who of the 9/11 in US right now. Right. So Akasha records, I don't know exactly how that communication happens, but there are techniques that helps you pull those records back. And I know few practitioners who do that. So I don't know the science behind it, but this is what, and that's why there are some prayers also, right? Of even after the person dies, right? Every year there is a specific period where you show the gratitude to that, and it is believed that it also goes to the Akasha records, and does some healing for that person, and also receives blessing from that soul that is in a state of journey, wherever, whatever form it is, right? But it happens through that data center type, some remote location in the universe. But scientifically, I have witnessed it myself. I've seen very accurate readings also that have claimed, and for myself also, as well as few of my friends who are scientists, we have done that. So I cannot say that there is no science there. How it works, I don't know. Is it accurate? One records that were read for me knew my parents' name, my wife's name, my kids' name, what we do, what they do, everything else that's not a public knowledge. And also shared about, right, the certain things that we suffered in, or the pain that was created in this life, right? What the origin of that was from the past lives, and what kind of situation and what kind of curses were there because you created pain for somebody else, and then all that stuff, right? So as an investigator, yeah, I will say that it does exist. Can I prove it or how it works? No.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. Thank you. We could really go off on this. This
One of
huge
my nephew, he is
energetic
a
database.
cardiologist in India. He has done a lot of research on this. So if you want, I can put you in contact with him.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Dr. Patel, I know you're busy, so
You can call me Vipul, right? Dr. Patel is just because I'm a
Awesome.
PhD. I don't use that. And yeah, anytime reach out to me or ask Khushali to connect you with me.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us today. I know I see a lot of people saying thank you on the chat. Yeah, that was great. We learned a bunch, and yeah,
And
just
feel
thank you
free
so.
to share this, make it publicly available. I don't have any issue with that, right? So it's up to you. Whatever.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, Samar Kashali, anything else you want to say before we close out?
That's it. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah.
Really
Yes,
appreciate all of you.
I just have the same. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Oh.